Episode 229, Pastoring Communicators and Creatives with Ben Stapley, Part 1. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Hey guys, thanks for hanging out this week. This week on the show, I'll be talking with my friend Ben Stapley all about how to pastor communicators and creatives. I'm so passionate about pastoring your people first. I've written an ebook on this topic, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But Ben and I walk through practical steps for you to pastor up, pastor down, and pastor in. And I've been telling you about this topic, pastoring first, for ever since we started years ago. And so I'll be telling you more about the ebook that I wrote on the topic and how you can pastor not only your staff members, but your volunteers as well. And I certainly haven't arrived, but these are some things that I've encountered and Ben has encountered that we'd love to share with you. So I can't wait to dive into my interview with Ben today. But first, I've been telling you about our brand new 1230 Media app, and we're super pumped about it, guys. This app is available in the Apple App Store as well as Google Play, so you can get it on either one of those platforms. And we've got some exclusive deals for you, training resources, and free content that you'll get if you turn on the notifications in the settings of the app. So we want you to download the app from the App Store or the Google Play Store, go to the settings, turn on notifications, and we're not going to blow you up, but we are going to send you some notifications of free coupon codes, free resources. You'll also get the podcast a day early, so on Sundays instead of Mondays, so you can access that content on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, and also on your way to work on Monday. So be sure to do that. Download the app. Turn on the notifications and get notified for all those resources available to you. Okay, we'll jump right into part one of my interview with Ben Stapley right after a quick word about our ebook, Pastor First. Check this out. Hey guys, Carl here. I want to tell you about my ebook, Pastor First, 15 Ways to Win the Hearts of Your Volunteers. Pastoring your people is the secret sauce to building a dynamic volunteer culture at your church. You have to care more about who your volunteers are becoming over what they do on your team. In this ebook, I share 15 practical ways to make people your first priority in your tech ministry. From knowing their name and their story, to scheduling intentional time outside of serving, to how to set them up for success, this ebook gives you a practical guide to pastoring your people well. Pick up a copy today at 1230.media/books. You can download it straight to your desktop or your favorite e-reader. I pray the book will give you some steps to show your team that you care more about them than what they do on your team. Hey guys, today I welcome to the podcast my friend Ben Stapley. Ben's at Christ Fellowship of Miami. Ben is a recurring character on our podcast. We've talked about several things, and today we're really going to dive into something that we're both super passionate about. Ben, welcome, man. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks so much for having me back here, Carl.
Yeah, man. So again, this week and next week, I really want to get into talking about pastoring our people well, especially creatives. So tell me why this is such a big passion for you.
It's a passion because I've been in the game for about 20 years now, and you start to see repeating patterns, right? And so being in ministry, being a creative and overseeing creatives and communicators, one of the biggest frustrations I've seen is that they get burnt out and then they leave. They leave the job, they leave the church, and worse yet, they leave Christ. So if there's anything I can do to stop that revolving door of people, I'm all for that.
And I think we've seen that especially lately with even big name pastors falling away, or the people that have written books saying, I don't believe that any of that anymore. I mean, just completely leaving the faith, things like that. So I know that you have a passion, that you've been in the game for a while, and you're going to spend the next 20 years of your ministry really pastoring the people who create content, right?
Yeah, that would be my heart. How to shepherd them, how to help them shepherd themselves. A lot of this is self-leadership as well. Some of these issues, and then also making sure that they receive it and request it from their lead pastors. So sometimes they have lead managers, but they don't have lead pastors. So they need to be explicit with them. I need this from you for my job to succeed and my soul to succeed.
Yeah. So with communicators and creatives, sometimes we focus more on getting more content from them or getting better content from them, and we forget to care for the people who are creating the content. So I'm glad that you're passionate about that. I am too. So we're going to dive into how to pastor creatives and communicators, and that is staff that you manage, volunteers you oversee, things like that. So let me ask you this to get rolling. Tell me what you think the problem is that we're trying to solve. And we've alluded to it, but give me a little bit deeper of the problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, ultimately it's burnout. And there have been great stats for this with lead pastors. You talked about, we most of the church have our most amount of stats for the highest position for lead pastors. And so we know what their average tenure is. We know what their average sticking points are, why they get disqualified from ministry. Oftentimes lead pastors get disqualified from ministry. It's usually a moral failure, right? It's something financial has gone wonky, something sexually has gone wonky. It's usually, that's how we know Satan's game plan, how to take that level of leadership out within the church. We've seen it again and again. That playbook is not new to us. But for communicators and creatives, it is a little bit new because we just don't have as much data. And so anecdotally and even reaching out in different forums, hey, what's the biggest tension for you? What would cause you to step out of ministry? What would make you turn your back on this? The thing I hear and I see again and again is burnout. That there aren't enough margins for these people. And you oftentimes have A-type personalities leading B-type personalities, imposing their personality and the will on them. So if it's a lead pastor, they might be designed for a 60, 70-hour work week. The creatives and communicators that are leading probably aren't wired that way. And so when it comes down to it, it's the burnout problem that I've seen that gets people to go. And that's the problem I'm trying to address with these people. Okay, so then what is causing the burnout? How do we fix this systemically to keep you engaged here as long as possible?
So it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the main reasons that I started our ministry, 1230 Media, is because I was at a church of 15,000 people on a weekend, and I was the only video guy, content creator for 5 campuses. And so I left that church, and then I went to New Spring Church, and kind of the same. They had more people on staff, but I see that problem over and over, and that's one reason we started our ministry, is to give relief to the creatives. So we serve a lot of churches that either can't afford a full creative team, or the creatives at the church are completely frying out. So we're saying, hey, can you outsource some of that? Can we take some of that for you to create more margin for you, creative, and for your creative team? So, man, we are so in sync on this. So tell me, and did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think you touched on something that wasn't in my my talking points here, but you touch on something that also causes burnout: the false notion that we need to be making everything from scratch. And so a lot of churches impose on themselves this notion. Hey, good artists, copy, great artists steal. Hey, there's content out there. You're not stealing, but at least purchase. Maybe in this case with 1230 Media, some churches will think, no, that's below us as creatives and artists, and we need to make everything from scratch, and that, which then causes burnout, because you're making everything instead of purchasing things that have already been made, and they don't need your unique church touch on them. They'll work and they'll play in your environments. So I think some of that burnout as well comes from a false mystique of what an artist is, and that everything they need to touch is completely original from start to finish, which isn't the case. You look at the gospel writers, right? It looks like they kind of borrowed off each other, or at least the source material as they were writing the gospels. There wasn't just, there was some collaboration there going on as well, that we can do that as well. They did that as artists, as writers. We can do that today as well, whatever medium that we're working in.
Yeah, and that's why we love. So we work in ready-made stuff that you can get. It's pre-made, and then also custom media. So we'll make it from scratch for a church. So we like to do that because it kind of takes that complete process off of the creative, where they can either create just stories or testimonies for their church, something that we couldn't do if we're, because we're at a distance, or frees up their time. So we love doing that. So, and you might have these talking points in front of you, but I wanted to tee you up here. Tell me some stats from ex-pastors on their either margin, burnout level. Like, give me some stats that you might have about former pastors.
So these are stats from people, from lead pastors in ministry that, would say, they ask a number of questions. How are you doing? What's working? What's not? And some things that were startling for me, some high percentages in terms of that burnout. 64% consider themselves overworked. 71% have experienced burnout. 77 feel there are unrealistic demands, and 85% have considered leaving ministry. So that's people in the 85, and that's your lead pastor, right? That's someone with if you want to say, like, maybe a high calling on their life, who've taken a lot of probably education to get here. And if these people who've already have some sunk cost in their profession of already thinking, man, I need to get out of this. What about the 25-year-old who just got out of art college and is trying to be a graphic designer? Their buy-in is even less. So it's going to take them less to push them out. So that's my concern. If you see these people flying in this high, it's going to be someone similar to the rest of the staff, but they're not going to have as much committed, and so it's going to be easier for them to bounce. And so how do we rectify that? Yeah, and how do we keep them in longer?
Okay, so why do we need to? Obviously, this could be an obvious answer, but let's talk about it. Why do we need to fix this problem?
We need, what I said on the onset, right? We need to, it's for three main reasons. First of all, it's for the sake of the church, the local church, that you have been, these people that we're talking to, these people we're talking about, communicators and creatives, have been uniquely gifted to make an influence in the kingdom. And the church needs their gift mix. So the faster they get burned out, the less we have of these people in our midst, and our ability to proclaim who Christ is through robust means of art forms is going to be diminished. And when that happens in the church, we lose our impact in the culture, and we get relegated to the sidelines. We get relegated to the sidelines for a lot of reasons. This should not be one of those reasons. So it's for the sake of that. And then it's the sake of the soul of the person, where if there aren't proper margins and there aren't proper burnouts, that's usually happening because of how you're being managed and who you're reporting to. But oftentimes we can misplace that. We can say, no, that wasn't my boss who did that to me. It was God. And I'm not just leaving the church, I'm leaving him. And that's, I guess, that's where it breaks my heart the most, is I've seen people leave the faith because of that. And so if you're not being led well, how do you force someone to lead you well so that you don't experience that woundedness? And we're all flawed, but how you don't experience major woundedness, which then causes you to question your faith. Those are some of the issues I'm trying to rectify.
Right. I'm with you there. The ultimate problem is that they're leaving the faith, not just the church, and not just a church, and not just the church, but their faith altogether. Okay, so let's get into good.
Yeah, I'm sure you've experienced this too, where you go to the conferences or you talk about this, and you see a lot of heads nodding, and you get a lot of people afterwards who come up to you and said, I need it. And so whenever I've given this talk, I've always received that I needed this. Thank you. You've addressed an elephant in the room that no one was willing to talk about.
Right.
We're all secretly updating our LinkedIn profiles, but we don't want to tell anybody because we're all this close to leaving the job.
Right. Yeah, and we've all had. Me and you have swapped stories of bad church experiences, or just different things that have happened in the church that we've seen with other people that we've talked to and ministered to. So yeah, it's a problem, and so I'm glad that we're talking about it. Okay, so let's get into how do we fix the problem. You have 3 areas that I really want to drill into: pastoring up, pastoring down, and pastoring in. So I want to dive into each of those. All right, so let's get into pastoring up. What do you mean by that? And then start us off there.
Yeah, so those 3 buckets really quickly: pastoring up, obviously yourself, pastoring down the people that you manage or report to you, and pastoring in yourself. And when it comes to pastoring up, how do you lead your leader? Hopefully they're a competent leader and gifted leader, but I'm sure they have some areas of deficiency. So how do you fill in those gaps? The first thing I challenge myself and others is always give before you get. So what's something you can give to your leader before you start saying, give me? Real easy for me is been like 2 things. It's been spiritual support. So before I know I might be asking an ask, I might be making an ask of my lead pastor. I'll just let them know. For the next month, I'm committed to taking 10 minutes a day during my lunch break and praying for you. Could you tell me one thing I could pray for you over this time? And not the false prayer of, hey, I'm praying for you. No, like I'll set a timer. And maybe you're a prayer warrior. Maybe you can do this for an hour. That's not my strong gift mix. 10 minutes is great for me to commit. But I will commit to praying for this, giving to them in a very tangible way, setting them up for success. Another like super efficient way to do this is to take something off their plate. Hey, you're taxed and you're overburdened as well. This is something that you do great, but I do good, or at least good enough. I can take it off your plate. So ask them to take something off before you then kind of come to them with a myriad of requests. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say in terms of making those asks is for the communicators and the creatives. First of all, it's realistic deadlines. Oftentimes, somebody who's not bent creative has no idea how long will take. And so making sure that you say, this is how long it's going to take if you want me to get it done. All right. We all know the good, faster, cheap, choose 2. Using that as an explanation from a creative to a leader is helpful as well, if you've never done that.
So let me stop you here, and maybe this is where your story comes in, and you can change it around if you need to. But tell me about the story of you bringing your pastor lunch, or there's a story there. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So this comes down to something else what you need. So it's realistic deadlines is I've used the crock pot analogy before when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And so, hey, a microwave and a crock pot will both get something warm, but a microwave gets it warm and rubbery. A crock pot pulls out the fullest flavors. And so I've always had this metaphor in my mind. And my wife challenged me. She said, let's pull it into reality. I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you keep on hitting your head against the door with your lead pastor and, hey, I need deadlines. I'm going to give my best work you give me. And she said, let's make him a crock pot. And so we made beef stew that night. And I told him that he always brown bagged his lunch. So I said, hey, let me bring in lunch for you the next day. And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm cheap. Go for it. And so I came in with the cheapest microwavable meal from Walmart that I could find. And I nuked the heck out of that thing and I put it on his desk. And then I brought in the crock pot that my wife let stew all night long. It was a beef stew, meat, potatoes, carrots. It was delicious. And he looked at both options and he said, why would I choose the microwave? I'm of course going to choose the crock pot. To which I said, yes.
Ding.
And it was a light bulb moment for him. Exactly. And he said, I see what you're doing here. You want me to give you more time so you can make this stuff instead of that other stuff. I said, yes. So if it takes like a silly illustration and a physical metaphor like that for you to connect with your lead, whatever it is, make that connection. I've also talked with them, hey, you have an art and you have a craft. You spend 15, 20 hours message prepping each week. If that was truncated to 2 to 3, could you get it done? Yes. Would it be any good? No. Would you feel burnt out? Would you feel underutilized and valued? Yes, yes, yes. So like, we want to respect your art form. Can you help us respect ours by giving those deadlines? Yeah.
Love that story, man. Love it. All right. With pastoring up, tell me about asking for training.
Yeah. So a lot of lead pastors will go and they will ask for particular, they'll get particular training. They'll go to the Global Leadership Summit. Family will go to the Orange Conference. But for a lot of creatives and communicators, they're either left on their own, right? Like, hey, just look at that YouTube tutorial video. Or they're not giving any funding in relationship to that. And this is the thing. Not only do they need it to kind of be on par with everybody else on staff, I would say they need it the most aggressively because their area of expertise changes so quickly from year to year, quarter to quarter, where, let's be frank, a small groups pastor is pretty much going to do the same thing year over year. It hasn't changed too much what they do. But if you took somebody from 5 years ago and put them in a time machine and dropped them in today and said, do incredible church communications, they would feel like a dinosaur just within a 5-year window. So if these people aren't getting recurring training, they're going to age themselves out of their discipline very fast. So it's not even on par training. It's, hey, every department gets this. Our department needs a little more because our field changes so fast. That's the other thing to pastor up on.
Good.
And then the next is I encourage people to ask for, I don't know about you, Carl, but I'm wired for praise. Those 5 love languages. I'm the verbal affirmation. Tell me this is working. Tell me this is going good.
And you do a great job of that.
Thank you. Way to apply it right away.
Yeah.
And so for communicators are by and large are wired this way because they are putting out content for feedback. Hey, did you like it? Did it work? Did it land? Did it accomplish the goal? And so if you are not giving any type of praise or all the verbal feedback is just constructive criticism, it's less celebration, it's more coaching, and it's more critiquing, again, you're setting these people up for burnout. So, I literally, we've gone to lead pastors and say, just pat me on the back here. We killed Christmas. It looked beautiful. It was well designed. It drew in a lot more people this past year. Anecdotally, I know it worked. I just need to hear you say it. And I've literally asked for that because I've had lead pastors who aren't wired that way. They were driven. I don't need man's praise or woman's praise. I'm just going to get this thing done. But because they're wired that way, they don't give it to other people. So just connecting those dots, saying, hey, you're not wired that way. I understand it. You have your own internal clock and drive, and nothing is going to stand in your way. And a lack of praise or whatever.
I don't want to steal our own thunder here, but this is also a piece. These are pieces that if we're leading other people, if this is something we want from our higher ups, we need to be intentional about praising those under us and that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's easy to not give the same grace that you want, or you want to be led at this high level, but not necessarily lead at that level. That's a challenging thing.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Next week on the show, we'll continue my conversation with Ben Stapley. We'll move into talking about how to pastor in, which is how to take care of yourself so that you can pastor others. We'll wrap my convo up with Ben next week. In 2 weeks on the show, I welcome back my friend James Wassam. James is an audio genius, guys, and we're really going to drill into live audio training. So if you touch the audio console in any way, if you're in production at your church, if you lead volunteers in the area of production, these are the episodes for you. We'll do 2 episodes with James starting in 2 weeks. We want you to follow 1230 Media on social media if you would. We give away a lot of free content there through our blog, through our podcast, training videos, and more. It's all free training material to help you transform the worship experiences at your church. So we would love to connect with you on social media. And also be sure to download the new 1230 Media app and turn on those notifications in the settings, and we would love to connect with you there as well. Well, thank you guys for listening and watching. Go out there and create some incredible worship experiences this week so that you can see life change happen at your church and in your community. I'll see you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit makingsundayhappen.com.